To begin with, I'd first like to explain how violent video games increase aggression in kids. Violent video games affect all audiences, from young kids to older kids, even into the adult ages. It also affects how violent video games affect how parents teach their kids. Like if they're so focused into their games, they can't focus, and the parents can't teach what they want to teach their kids. And also, two main points that help break down the aggression in kids from violent video games is the time spent playing these games and the graphics, the content of the game. Some evidence behind this is that violent video games affect their attitudes, behaviors, and actions. Video games will affect all of these things. One major, really big point is that these video games don't only affect their short-term actions and behaviors, but it affects into their long-terms. Just playing for these video games for a short time is not, it will hurt them in the future, and there's no benefit from it. It will only make their future hard on them. And if they have aggression, it's also hard to communicate. It affects the communication, and it affects their future skills. There's no good benefit from this. Violent video games also have a bigger effect on physical than verbal aggression, so therefore kids could get into more fights than just saying harsh words or stuff like that to kids. And violent video games shouldn't affect, it should not have to cause a fight or physical aggression. There's other ways to fix that, and violent video games should not be a factor of why kids are fighting. It should not be like that at all. Just to put things into perspective, kind of statistically, one experiment that these scientists did was that they exposed these people to this video game named GTA, and 83% of those people already knew what the game was, or have heard of it or played it before. So if this many people are exposed to it, then there's easy access, and it should not be that easy to get your hands on a game. A general assumption of video games is that video games are really popular with kids, from all age ranges. And for example, media violence is the most common risk factor in causing aggression, which means there's a lot of people playing these games. For example, there's 97% of the US kids that age from ages 12 to 17 contribute to the violent video game industry. And that's only a broad age range. There's people below 12 years old and above 17-year-olds that play these games. So that's just a broad age range, and there's a lot more people that can contribute to this industry. Another example of how video games is such a broad subject and generalization, and they're so popular, is that an example of a game is Call of Duty, and within the first 5 days of selling this game, they made $550 million. So if they're making that much money, then there obviously has to be a lot of consumers buying these games. If there's a lot of buyers, then obviously a lot of kids are getting access to these games from all age ranges, and even their parents could be buying it for them, and even if they could be okay with it, the parent might not know that it's affecting their future, and it's affecting how they behave, how they act, how they socialize. It's affecting all of these factors. And I know all parents want the best for their kids, and the first step of making having the most success for their kids is eliminating these video games. It should not be it should not be of where they are now, and they should be eliminated. Another thing that people should look at is their ratings. A lot of kids play M-rated games, and 70% of people own such a game, and 80% of people will just play such a game. But that is more than 3/4 of the people, almost more than 3/4 for each percentage, and that is a lot of people. So pretty much money and how many people play and the ratings, that all affects how video games are so popular. Another really quick example is when kids are left unsupervised, their first instinct, like the first thing they want to do is go to these video games, like go to these violent video games, and like it's not helping them, because like if they're with a friend, like it'll influence their decisions, and like just violent video games should not be the kid's first instinct. And that shows how it's just how video games are such a broad topic and they're so popular. Some objections to this could be that some people might think it's a coping mechanism, but it's really not. Like, there's other ways to cope with your anger. You could relax, you could vent, you could work out. Like, there's other ways to help your anger, like if someone's angry, other than video games. Like, they don't need to let it out on the video games. Another objection is some people might think that there's positive benefits from it, but there is not, because even if you play, like I said earlier, even if you play video games for a short period of time, it affects their long-term like behaviors. Like, so there's obviously no correlation in why there should be positive benefits from it. The last objection people could say is that they might think it could improve their hand-eye coordination, but it really does not. Like, there's other, like, again, there's other alternatives to that. They could play sports, or even if they're not athletic, they could construct a puzzle. Even if they don't like puzzles, they could build something. So like, there's other ways to fix these and not have, like, pretty much improve your hand-eye coordination and not have to do it through video games. So pretty much no reason will ever override kids' safety, and their safety should be held up first. One graph, and like this is like a graph that really shows really well how opinions are linked between violent video games and violent behaviors. This graph pretty much just shows what they think. As you can see up here, the dark blue is people who agree, medium blue is the people who do not agree, and the really light blue at the end are the people who like refuse or don't really know. And as you can tell by this graph, there's a lot of dark blue. So like, a lot of people agree that video games like correlate with like their violent behaviors. And on this graph, there is, on the bottom, there's all these percentages, and all of these categories are like different races, like different categories. So it could be like white, black, Hispanic, all women, all men, and people between 30 and 49 years of age. But like, that's just like really like good graph of how they correlate to each other. And these two percentages right here at the top, pretty much the 42% is showing how many women agree that there is a correlation, and 22% of men believe that there is a correlation. So like, that's not like a small amount. That's almost for 42, that's almost half of the women. And like, that is a lot of people, like, for all women. And this is pretty much just like a very good graph of how even like a good example of how people think and how people like, it puts it into perspective pretty much. This is why violent video games should be eliminated. They're not good in any factor, and if they are eliminated, it will help kids in their future and it will benefit them.